Now, it's not an easy transition from villain to hero. Black Adam kept many of his darkest tendencies. But when an individual possesses as much raw, unbridled power as Black Adam, you give them a second chance. A 15th chance, a 99th. And in time, the prideful antihero found common ground with some of his JSA peers.
Mr. Fixit, you talked about how you watched a third of Black Adam on HBO Max.
Oh, yeah. It was really bad.
And I was saying I didn't care enough about it to get mad at it. There's not enough there to warrant an emotional response in general. But you were talking about James Gunn and basically killing the DCEU and stuff. So carry on, Mac.
Yeah, so I guess, I don't know if it was Dwayne Johnson or something, that he basically got the fucking letter saying, sorry, dude, we ain't doing this shit. Because a lot of people were saying that, yeah, even with Gunn, they're going to still do Black Adam 2. And even though Black Adam 2 didn't make the money it was supposed to, they're still going to make a Black Adam 2 because it's Dwayne Johnson. And then apparently James Gunn's like, nope, don't care. And then we got the other domino that fucking Henry Cavill's out, right? And that threw everybody into a huge fervor. And by everybody, I mean 7 Snyder bots, right? So then Gunn had to post, let me pull up the actual fucking, no, I'm trying to stop cursing so much. The actual freak flopping statement here.
Well, I mean, if we do this at all, it'll be a DC special and we're profane on that.
I'm just saying, I didn't need to say fuck 3 times in that sentence. Okay, he says, one of the things Peter and I were aware of when we took the job as heads of DC Studios was a certain minority of people online that could be, well, uproarious and unkind, to say the least. Our choices for the DCEU are based upon what we believe is best for the story and best for the DC characters who've been around for nearly 85 years. Perhaps these choices are great, perhaps not, but they're made with sincere hearts and integrity, and always with the story in mind. No one loves to be harassed or called names, but to be frank, we've been through significantly worse. Disrespectful outcry will never ever affect our actions. We were aware there'd be a period of turbulence when we took this gig, and we knew there would sometimes have to make difficult and not so obvious choices, especially in the wake of the fractious nature of what came before us. But this means little to us in comparison to our jobs as artists and custodians and helping to create a wide and wonderful future for DC. That is 100% directed at Zack Snyder and his Snyder minions, right? Well, I mean, it's not even a question.
I'm a little bit more keyed into the Snyder stance than you are because it's a sort of a one-sided nemesis affair. I don't think they give a shit about me, but they bother me a lot, and so I pay attention to them a lot. And there's a few like key guys. One of them's called, what's the guy from Witcher? What's the character's name?
Henry Cavill.
The character. Fixit. I'm sure you know this.
Kal-El.
Don't you watch Witcher, Fixit?
Yeah.
What's that guy's name? The character.
I don't know.
It starts with a G, right? Geralt?
I've seen 2 episodes.
Oh, okay.
So no, that sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Geralt or some shit like
that.
that.
So there's a bunch of guys that call themselves Geralt, and they're all the Snyder stands. Geralt of Noth is the main one that I look at. And I remember because of Black Adam, in particular, they were still seeing that as an extension of the Snyderverse, and they thought that maybe Gunn was going to be on their side because he did bring Cavill back, supposedly. Now, obviously, all the shit was before he ever showed up. I guess he just didn't get in the way of it. So they were giving him some, extending him courtesy that they weren't showing to Walter Hamada and all the other guys that Ray Fisher was throwing under all the buses. So they thought, okay, so maybe we've got an ally in Gunn. Let's try to butter him up. Let's say that Black Adam isn't a completely bland pre-2008 superhero movie. And then, that happens, and it's clear that essentially Warner Brothers is continuing its war with the Snyder stands. And, they finally fire James Gunn, the pedophile with the horrible jokes and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, Jesus, this all over again. I'm so tired. This is so last decade. This is so the teens. Can we get into the 20s already, please? So yeah, James Gunn is not their friend. Established.
Yeah, no, he is not their friend. But then he also did the Kingdom Come picture, so that was weird too, right? Like, are we on board with the stuff he can do with DC or not? I don't know. Is it too early to tell?
Well, I mean, I was wondering how literally we should take that. I personally am not interested in seeing a Kingdom Come film. However, that is so a Snyder type of movie. Like, you really ought to get Snyder for that. And again, if you're talking about, well, let's give these guys one last hurrah, let's give Henry Cavill one more chance to be Superman before he ages out and shit, and Gal Gadot and the rest, then yeah, that seems like a perfect thing for them to do. Doesn't look like that's going to happen now. And the last time we were together, I talked a little bit how I thought that they should try to do Crisis on Infinite Earths, try to get there before Secret Wars happens, which is basically Marvel doing their own version of Crisis on Infinite Earths. I don't think that's what's going to happen now. And I think that, again, I think the plans evolve. So maybe they were thinking about doing that shit. I don't think that's happening now, though. So it's a different playing field. But I'd like to hear what Fixit thinks about them adapting potentially Kingdom Come, or where you think they're coming at this from.
Nah, I think they're going to do a clean slate and just wipe everything out and start all over. I think that's what Gunn really wants. I don't think he wants the baggage of everything that came before, because then you have to incorporate all that stuff. I mean, it would be great if they did a Kingdom Come, but that's a hard sell for him to do the WB and on his first, besides doing those Suicide Squad, he hasn't done anything else. Yes, he did, Peacemaker, and it was a pretty good hit on HBO Max, but he really needs a home run coming out the gate to kind of validate what they're doing with their universe now.
But he does have Guardians of the Galaxy coming out next year, and I think it's pretty safe bet that's going to make some money.
That's his swan song out of Marvel. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I'm hoping he goes full, like, no, this is how I want to end it, and that doesn't half-ass it. I hope he wants to go out with a bang. I mean, I think so. He did the Christmas special, which was actually kind of cute. So I'm hoping he goes out with a bang. But to me, DC compared to Marvel are two different animals, where Marvel was lean and mean, and it's been trucking along, even with little bumps here and there. DC's just been a wreck since day one. And I mean, that was fucked up where they have Cavill come out and say, oh yeah, I'm coming back. And then literally 2 days later, like, no, I'm not. They ended up to destroy it, the whole universe. And then same thing happened to your Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. She was super excited about what's coming to the future. And then all of a sudden, there's already a lot of controversy kind of.
Well, again, it was really, the intentions weren't laid out right off the bat, in part because I don't think that they had intentions going into this. I do think that since they had curried some favor with the Snyder stands by just not being Walter Hamada or Jeff Johns or what have you, Joss Whedon, they were getting a little bit of slack, and I think that they maybe took advantage of that. But I also think that they probably legitimately had ideas in mind of what they could do with the DCEU without just abandoning it. I think that the simple matter of plans changed because circumstances changed, and one of the big changes is that you're supposed to have franchise Viagra come out and knock it out of the park, and Black Adam just didn't do shit because it wasn't really much of anything. I think it was one of the worst things The Rock has done in years, and it's not like I'm not showing up to most of his movies anyway, but his whole thing is the charisma and playing against being this gigantic mountain of a man by giving a little bit of a twist to it and being goofy like in the Jumanji movies. And when he's just like, no, I'm just going to be this hulking, charmless, beast, and thinking that's all he needed to get a movie across. And no, it takes so much more now than that. And if you're not going to take full advantage of being The Rock, you're really failing at this, The movie needed to make a bunch of money. It didn't make a bunch of money. And I think that was probably, maybe people were waiting for that to happen and were pouncing on that. Maybe they kind of knew anyway that they'd done test screenings. Because that's one thing that came out earlier today. I don't know if you saw. The actual projected budget was something like $260 million. It was supposed to be a $190 million movie, but they did test screenings that didn't do well. And so they went out and they did a bunch of expensive additional foot shooting and additional CGI to beef it up, apparently. So then they talked about how the advertising budget was a minimum of $80 million. And that's how you can see where The Rock was trying to contest that, no, the movie's in the black. And it's like, well, we know nowadays that usually it's at least a double. I mean, in the old days, you could say, okay, double the budget and you're in the black. But now really, especially with the superhero shit, it's more like triple the budget before you're in the black. And the math just does not add up in Dwayne's favor. So that was a bunch of bullshit. That was a bunch of face saving and all that shit about changing the hierarchy of power power of the DC universe. All that the movie brought to the table was The Rock, and it just simply wasn't enough. So yeah, you're going to have to make changes because this is another movie that failed.
Well, because like he's done that villain before, that villain character when he did Faster. I don't know if you've seen that one. I like that movie. He's a villain, but he's very quiet. He doesn't speak. It's all about just his intensity. This one, like the kid was annoying. I mean, just there's a lot of annoying.
Well, I
parts
mean,
of the movie to me.
let's stop for a minute and look. I mean, right off the bat, the movie is called fucking Black Adam. That means nothing to anybody but hardcore DC comic book fans. Because Black Adam really isn't even a big presence in animation. It's not, maybe in gaming, maybe he rolled out an Injustice or some shit, but he's just not anything that anybody's going to recognize on its own. Now, the character obviously exists to be a spinoff from Shazam, and yet they almost went out of their way to avoid making clear connections between the two, aside from the Wizard Shazam, right? Mm-hmm. So he's not in the sequel. They're not setting up him having a big fight because that's not going to be good enough. He's got to fight Superman. He's not going to waste his time with Zach Levy and his inflatable muscles and stuff. So you're taking Black Adam away from the Shazam family, the Marvel family. That's the whole thing that he is. He's the dark mirror to them. So it's almost like doing a reverse Flash movie without the Flash. And then the whole reason why anybody gave a crap about Black Adam is because he was constantly showing up in Jeff Johns' JSA run, where they were trying to sort of rehab him and get into his Egyptian roots and build up a dark Marvel family to go against the Marvel family. All the stuff that happened in 52, all the stuff that happened with building up Kahndaq and stuff. And most of that got, swept under the table. Like, I don't think that stuff with the sun was from the comic books. I think that's something they invented for the movie. If it is from the comic books, it didn't make much of an impact, because what I'm always thinking about is how he became a tyrant and showing that arc, how he fell in love with Isis and lost her, and how that affected him, how he lost his family to the Four Horsemen, and all the pathos that character develops over the course of Jeff Johns' handling of him isn't in the movie. So if you don't have, all you have is a connection to the JSA, and that's about the worst JSA. And it was funny because we did that Supposing years ago, where you asked me, well, what should we do with the DC universe if X changed or something? And I said, we'll start over again with the Justice Society, since you fucked up the Justice League. So this was their opportunity to do that. And they clearly tried, because those characters are in the movie a lot, but they didn't do a good job with them. They didn't have anything to do. And you're wondering if maybe The Rock had something to do with that. Like, he didn't want to be outshone, and so you just have him fighting JSA guys to show how powerful he is. But nobody cares about Black Adam. Really, for the most part, the general public doesn't care about the Justice Society, and this isn't even the Justice Society. It's just a bunch of fucking the losers, the bottom rungs, the all-stars, whatever you want to call them. The only ones you have that are name brand are Hawkman and Dr. Fate, and really they're not recognizable versions of them. And more so Fate, because at least he's got the armor and he's got the magic and shit, even though he's doing Doctor Strange spells instead of Dr. Fate spells, and they're leaning into him just being a knockoff, whereas obviously that's not the case. But once again, if you've built up Doctor Strange and how he visually manifests his powers so well in the Marvel Universe, don't do the same fucking shit, especially because that's not even from the comics, it's not from animation. You're expecting like an Oded Fair, and you've got Pierce Brosnan instead, so you have the opportunity to show how you're distinct, and no, they just try to make him Doctor Strange. There was just nothing there for anybody to hook on to aside from The Rock, and The Rock just wasn't enough. And it's like, okay, well, we're moving on now. This shit didn't work. What do you want us to do? Greenlight a sequel to a movie that didn't make any money? How long are we supposed to just keep, churning stuff out on goodwill and to please a very loud group of people on Twitter? I think it's pretty clear that Twitter is not going to be powering anybody's social revolutions, pop culture revolutions anytime soon. So give it the fuck up already.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just
pathetic.
I do think, though, if Black Adam would have made money, maybe, I mean, that could be why they were kind of quiet when they first got on board here, was that, like, okay, we have to see, like, Flash, it doesn't matter how well that does, right? Like, that dude's gone, right? But Black Adam was the last thing kind of that could be like, all right, you might need to keep Dwayne Johnson. And since there was like a stinger or whatever with Henry Cavill, if we keep Black Adam and it makes fucking $2 billion, no matter how, outside the realm of possibility that would be. Although, look, it's The Rock and you can get some China money or whatever. I don't know. Let's just keep quiet. Let's see how the box office does. But once it did, they're like, okay, you have permission. Trash all this shit. just throw it in the garbage, right? And that's what they did. I mean, is Gal Gadot even going to stay as Wonder Woman?
It doesn't look that way. They're not definitively. They've not definitively said that any of these guys are out the door, but the inferences are there.
Contracts with them either.
Right. It's like, Henry Cavill comes out and says, "I'm back as Superman." He wasn't back for the stinger in Black Adam. Obviously, there's supposed to be more there, and then that didn't happen. Same goes with Patty Jenkins bringing in her script. Did you guys read what was the basics of that script?
No, please tell me.
No, I just saw. But before you get to it, all I saw was that she got basically told your services are no longer needed, and then I heard that she said, No, you can't fire me. I quit." And then I heard that no, that's actually not what happened. They told her to fuck off. But whatever. Go ahead.
She worked on that script with Jeff Johns, which is the same team responsible for Wonder Woman 1984, which is a movie that I've defended but recognized that it wasn't popular and it was very controversial, and I haven't watched the movie since. I watched it several times for podcasting purposes. That's telling in and of itself. I do like a lot of things about that movie, but I don't like it nearly as much as the first Wonder Woman, certainly. And if it had any other character besides Wonder Woman in it, I wouldn't be bothering with it anymore, right?
Can I make a comment on that real quick? Mm-hmm. I will say nothing has unified the fan bases of both Marvel and DC with the fact that Wonder Woman 1984 was horrible. I think that
not a lot of people standing for that one. Yeah,
universally accepted that is like a terrible fucking movie. I would just throw it out there. I think time has been on our side.
I agree with that.
Well, you guys hated it in the first place, but yeah, no problem.
No. The first one is okay.
Acknowledge.
Okay, you have to acknowledge that the 84 is really bad.
I don't want to go down that road. I'm just saying time has erred on our side, not whatever.
Yeah, I thought that there might be a fan base for that movie that never showed up, and it does have big problems, and I fully acknowledge those problems. I just didn't have as big a problem with it as most people, but I recognize it's a flawed movie, and I recognize that whatever joys I found in that movie were not broadly shared. Okay, so yeah, we can all. It's a flop.
What was the base of the third one? I want to hear this.
Okay, so again, it's the same writing team as the second movie, so great big red flags right there. No Alan Heinberg, who increasingly seems like he was an essential part of that mix. The plan was it was going to be Wonder Woman versus Ra's al Ghul, and they were going to bring Steve Trevor back using the Lazarus Pit.
Of course.
So Wonder Woman versus the League of Assassins and Ra's al Ghul. So you kind of see where the problem is right from jump, that they're going to Batman's villains, like Batman's going to share his villains with fucking Wonder Woman, just right off the bat. But also, I have come around to Steve Trevor over the years. There was a time where I hated the guy, and now I'm cool with him, and I see what value he brings to the table. But Jesus fucking Christ, let it go, Especially after the second one. The whole second movie is about letting him go, or not letting him go, unfortunately, to some degree. It gets kind of sad and creepy at this point. Jeez, So yeah, so you can see why on the merits, even if you weren't trying to clean house, that was kind of a non-starter.
That was not going to fly.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. If Jeff Johns doesn't have Alan Moore's bones to dance on, can't come up with you. That sounds horrible, dude.
Well, and also it's funny because then she comes back and is like, well, we're still actively developing X-Wing Rogue Squadron. You people were trying to say that it's dead, but it's not. We're still working on that. Like Kathleen Kennedy said, we're working on that. And it's like, yeah, right after the Rian Johnson Star Wars trilogy that we still haven't seen, Yeah. There are people who have much more successful careers that have still not progressed with their Star Wars plans to date. I'm not thinking that Patty Jenkins is going to be the one who bucks the trend unless they're going to put that on Disney Plus,
I think that was the original idea.
Yeah, I thought it was a Disney Plus show.
No, that was supposed to be a movie.
Really?
Yeah, but then Wonder Woman 1984 happened.
Yikes.
I mean, you don't shoot a promotional video of Patty Jenkins in flight gear on an Air Force base and then not do anything for multiple years, just completely dead silence.
They did that.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot they did that. Julie just mentioned that. Right?
Yeah. So, that's some face saving. I don't buy that at all. Yeah, we're talking about a director that did Monster and then nothing for like 15 years, okay? So, not the person who has the strongest career trajectory. You got Wonder Woman 1984 on your resume. That's not opening doors for you. So, she needed Wonder Woman 3, and for that door to be closed to her, that's going to be painful. And again, Gal Gadot, all those people, those doors are closing. The only person who's going to continue to work, apparently, is Jason Jason Momoa, which is a whole other thing.
Oh,
Really?
I forgot about Aquaman.
Yeah, because those are the last. That's the last. Well, I thought they're phasing him out too.
Mac, you want to jump on that one?
Okay. All I saw was he's not Aquaman. He's going to be something else.
Lobo.
But I was like, is that a hot take clickbait article? And I didn't click it.
No,
But
that's
obviously-
some like Instagram shit, or that was Momoa saying, "Oh, I talked with James Gunn about doing something with my favorite comic book character of all time." So yeah, we've all said he should be Lobo. Probably going to be Lobo.
Okay.
Which, and I've heard people too get really irate about that. It's like, oh, the DCU did such a wonderful job of casting people of color and giving variety to this very white bread universe and blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, Jason Momoa is fucking Lobo, man. That's
I
like
mean,
the part he's
Lobo
born
from day
for.
one.
Yeah,
I mean, you could argue he was kind of even being Lobo as Aquaman.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, already he's a hybrid of Namor and Aquaman, just through physique and background and the mingling of their stories over the years. So yeah. And then Lobo. There's definitely a strong element of Lobo. It's like, let the guy who's good at being Lobo be Lobo.
Is he gonna do the main man thing where he doesn't get killed, he gets chopped up, he's unkillable?
I mean,
Honestly, I won't lie. That is something I would like to see James Gunn do. I think he would do a pretty cool Lobo movie.
oh yeah, that's a good combination there. Him on Lobo would make way more sense than him on Superman.
That kind of weird characters, that's absolutely in his wheelhouse. Like I remember reading about it, but not thinking about it. But now I was talking about it, I'm like, you know what? I think James Gunn would because he'd make it definitely an R-rated movie. It'd be almost like their version of Deadpool. I'd be surprised if he's not fucking breaking the fucking fourth wall and shit.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. Is that you could have an R-rated Lobo movie. He could be doing Deadpool type humor, but also you have the whole Guardians of the Galaxy space background as well. It's kind of a perfect mingling there.
And I do kind of like DC's galactic characters. I mean, that's Darkseid and all that. I mean, dude, that's actually kind of a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
I will say though, James Gunn has said, obviously you got to take all this shit with a grain of salt, but apparently he's been on like a damage control the last couple of days saying we're not recasting it. No, there have been no announcements about recasting. Nobody did. I think he said his quote was nobody's being recast except for the Suicide Squad, right? So, but we'll see what that means in the long run. I'm not so sure about that. Henry Cavill seemed to make it pretty clear that he's out. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's gonna go do the Warhammer series at Amazon, so I'm happy for that.
He probably feels like an asshole for leaving Witcher now.
Well, no, my understanding is he wanted to get out of Witcher because the writing on that show has apparently suffered. It's gotten further away from the novels, and he hasn't been happy with it.
Shit,
yeah. So that was already kind of like, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, he quit Witcher to do Superman. Now he doesn't get to be Superman." It's like, well, that may have been an element of it, but he also was ready to get off of the Netflix show, especially because, let's be honest, Netflix shows don't have the longest life expectancy anymore.
No.
It's not stable work necessarily. And if they're going from him to Liam Hemsworth, maybe there's something to that, which is something I really want to address in a moment. We know that Netflix is trying to, cut costs where they can. And while Witcher has been a somewhat successful show, it's not gotten the buzz of a lot of the other shows. I mean, I'm sure it has a niche following. I'm sure it does okay in the ratings, but it's not one of those things that are being talked about at the water cooler at work. It's not an inescapable presence in anybody's life. You're pretty much, if you're a Witcher guy, then you know your people, but I don't think it's crossing over into the mainstream all that much.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with that.
It's like a thing, but I don't actually hear anybody actually really talking about it.
I think I've only seen like the first season.
We watched a couple of episodes. Paquita didn't get into it. I was never really into it to begin with, so we didn't make it past like one or two. They did have that really cool tracking shot where he's doing the sword fight and everything. That's about all I remember about that, what little we did watch. But I am sorry that he's not continuing with Superman. I do think he really looks the part, and I think, because keep in mind, I did not hate the DC movies as much as you guys did. I've defended those movies, again, as much as I shit on the Snyder stands, I liked all of the Snyder movies to some degree, at least to a degree where I'd be able to defend them as, at least they weren't doing the Marvel shit, at least they weren't trying to be Marvel until they were.
Oh my God, here we go.
Right. But Cavill looks great. He's got the presence. He's got the physique. He's got the looks. I'd have loved to have seen him do a better Superman movie than Man of Steel. And we've talked about Man of Steel gets a bad rap because of the violence and the 9/11 porn. But it's a good movie. And like we said the other day when we were hanging out, that movie just moves, man. That movie's got a lot of momentum. They should have built on that instead of going into Dawn of Justice, because Man of Steel's not a bad flick. It's just got some problems. They could have fixed it going forward. It's a shame that they didn't. And I think think he would have been a really great Superman if he'd had the opportunity to be in a better movie, but I think he did a good job for what time he did have. It's just a shame that it's over with already.
Hey, I mean, there's nobody to blame except for fucking the people running DC's movies. So I mean, that's not my fault.
Right.
But I think that he's expired milk.
Yeah.
Like he is a relic of a universe past. You could not have him pop up in new movies with like a new Batman and a new Wonder Woman, and it would just, it's weird. So sorry, dude.
Well,
you should have made sure the movies you were going to be in didn't suck shit so bad.
He's still Henry Cavill at the end of the day. It's not like he's The Rock. He doesn't get to call all kinds of shots and shit. But yeah, I absolutely agree. They keep trying to make the Snyderverse happen. It ain't going to happen. No matter how much we try to tell them it's not going to happen. No matter how much you show them, this is what these movies cost. This is what these movies made. These are how much the toys aren't selling. You go to Five Below and see if you can find some Man of Steel action figures. I'm pretty sure you can. A decade on. It's not working, but you can't convince these guys that it's not going to work. If you haven't put these guys over by now, do start fresh. That's a smart play. But that's kind of what I was working towards, is James Gunn is getting all the ire because, again, he's the Marvel guy who's gone into the DC house and is destroying everything. And he's like a sleeper agent. He's the Manchurian creative director, that kind of bullshit. I don't think people understand what's happening here. James Gunn took the job that nobody else wanted. I think he took it in part because he got pissed off at how he got treated over all the shit when he got fired by Marvel and stuff. And I do think he probably sees an opportunity to do some cool creative stuff. And he is a person who knows comic books. So he's a much more of an ally than we've ever had at DC, where we've had one person after another who seems to actively detest comic books and try to go as far away from comics as possible. But I think the thing that people are missing is they're flipping houses. The AT&T bought Warner Brothers, didn't know what they were doing, were hemorrhaging money. Who the fuck is Discovery to be buying Warner Brothers? Discovery ain't shit, All they do is their bullshit reality shows, right? They got a bunch of investors together. They bought Warner Brothers on the cheap from AT&T when they wanted to flip that shit. They're going to try to strip mine it, get it down as lean as possible to where it's profitable, and then they're going to sell it to Universal for a profit. We're in this interim period where Discovery is just trying to make it as valuable seeming as possible before they pawn it off on the next, studio. James Gunn is probably, unless he's very successful, and that might be what he's looking forward to, is he'd probably like to be a Kevin Feige, have control over his career, because this is a guy who thought at one point in time, fairly recently, that his entire career was over with because of internet bullshit, perpetuated by the same people who were trying to fucking glad hand him 2 months ago, right? So they keep thinking like, oh, we'll bring back Henry Cavill, bring back Gal Gadot. It's like, it's just so unrealistic because you realize these contracts are structured. So every time you show up as Superman, you get a pay bump. They have to keep paying more and more money. And it's a sunk cost fallacy. Why would you keep bringing these guys back and paying them more and more money when they never fucking make a return? You're just losing money this way. If you're trying to go lean, you're gonna recast it for no other reason than for the money. Like Jason Momoa's Aquaman made $1 billion, right? But we're probably not going to get $1 billion for Aquaman 2, in part because the novelty's not there, because the economy isn't where it was when the first Aquaman came out. But also, if you can keep Jason Momoa and put him in a role that may be more successful, and I don't see a lot of Aquaman t-shirts. Like, people like the movie, or at least some people like the movie, but it didn't become the merchandising bonanza that Marvel's got. And they don't just want to sell you the fucking movie, man. They want to sell you the toys. They want to sell you the t-shirts. They want your mom to be buying this shit, That's not what's happened so far, and that's their biggest success. None of the other movies, Aquaman is the #1 DCEU movie still, right? People seem to forget that. So you're keeping the guy that put asses in seats. You're dumping Amber Heard, which, I don't agree with necessarily, but we won't get into the whole Johnny Depp bullshit. The fact is, it's an element of controversy, and she's also getting more money to appear as Mira, and possibly costing you money by doing so. So instead of walking into a quagmire, it's like, well, guess what? No, he's going to play Lobo now. We're dumping all this shit, and we're not paying any of these people any more money than we have to. And Momoa's probably like, I'm sure he's going to get taken care of okay for Lobo, but he's probably not going to get Aquaman 3 money for doing Lobo. It's just better money than out on your ass, unless Marvel's extending him offers and shit beyond the $500,000 they tried to pay him to play Drax years ago. I think he'd rather just go ahead and play Lobo. And in fact, it's kind of smart, because if he already wants to play Lobo, you might be able to pay him maybe not quite as much as he'd be asking asking otherwise if he knows he's going to be able to play a character that he might be able to pull a Ryan Reynolds on and become a gravy boat for him. It's kind of a good investment on his part, and you're probably getting him cheaper than you would have otherwise. Everything that these guys are going to be doing going forward is to get the most money for the least investment. Somebody was trending a set of movies that supposedly Gunn was going to be doing, and then one of the things they brought up was Martian Manhunter, which I'm pretty dubious about. I'm not willing to put my mouth on that particular hook. But the fact is, you don't have to spend $60 million on a Martian Manhunter movie. You could make that rather cheaply. You don't have to cast big names if you can do like sort of the Blumhouse version of superhero movies, which is what Todd McFarlane should be doing with Spawn and doesn't seem to be happening. But if you can get a decent looking superhero movie out there for $60 to $90 million instead of $260, it's way easier getting the black that way. And you can get a little bit more obscure and let people have a little bit more creative leeway and not stress out CGI guys to try to create these grand spectacles and compete directly with Marvel. If all you're doing is trying to take advantage of the DC brand and expand that brand and start getting people interested in it without so much of a cost outlay, then that's what you do. But it's not about these, James Gunn is making all these bold creative decisions and how dare he dump all the people. It's the money, stupid. It's about the fucking money. It's not even about him. It's him and Safran are talking to the fucking fuckhead Zaslav. Here's what kind of money we're willing to give you guys. Do what you can with this. You're creative people. They got the trauma guy to do cheap superhero movies that they can turn a big profit on. You can't continue the Snyderverse and go cheap. It's about the fucking money, guys. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all about the money. I think
a lot of it's the fucking money. The money and the fact and the merchandise isn't moving. They want merchandise.
Speaking of toys, I think Gunn wants to play with his own toys, and Henry Cavill's not his toy. That's Snyder's toy.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing too. What's so funny to me is like I see these guys talking about how why would you sabotage these movies that are coming out? It's like why would you? This is every studio ever. This is so fucking elementary movie making. When you have a new regime come into a movie studio, the first thing they do is undermine anything that was on the docket that was made by the last guys because you don't want to be fucking Bob Chapek over here, you know? You don't want to see the other guys' stuff succeed and then your shit falters under your own watch when you can fucking, cut these guys' throats and be able to start fresh and be able to claim full credit for the successes. Of course you're going to undermine Aquaman. Of course you're going to undermine The Flash. You'd be stupid not to if you're trying to prove your worth as opposed to Walter Hamada's worth, you know?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. But yeah, I just don't like why were they? It's bizarre to me they even had their hopes up. Mm-hmm. Right? Like it's so
these
silly.
Are not people that are grounded in a reality that we all share, though. I mean, these are people who think that fucking Zack dumbass Snyder is some kind of a goddamn auteur genius. Fucking, Sucker Punch Man. Are you kidding me? Shit.
Your algorithm must be so fucked up. I don't even want to know what your algorithm looks like. It's all like Snyder and politics. Oh my gosh, sounds like fucking purgatory. Sounds like hell. That sounds like hell.
Yeah, I'm still debating on pulling the trigger on the fucking Twitter account. So yeah, I guess the algorithm did contribute to that shit.
Sundown, you better take care. If I find you been creeping round my back stairs, sometimes I think it's a sin. When I feel like I'm winning, when I'm losing again, we think you're special. 21st Century Boys. AJ Lowe, Dr. Angie, Between the Pages blog, Billy Hines, Borgstad, Brian Dockery, Chris Lydon, Dave's Comic Heroes blog, Ed Moore, Fabio Buelva's La Empresa, The Hammer Strikes, Random Geek, Stuff, History of Comics on Film, Iowa's Joe Is, Jeffrey Brown, JMT Prod, John Schaefer Hames, KOU, Camille Rossiak, Kirk Spencer has no gifts under the tree, Mike at Send Aliens to Me, Men, My Comic Book Collection 70s to 90s, Peter Madera, Ria Mike on Hive, Richard Field, Roger Preby, Ronald Clark, Sean Phillips, Siskoid, Speak Comics, Superbound, Talk Nerdy to Me, Tim Price, The Podcrasher, Vinny the Artist Gallery, Wibbly Wobbly Dicey Wicey RPG Podcast, Wonder Woman, Warrior for Peace Podcast, and Xenozoic Xenophiles.
The preceding program is a non-profit fan production. Any copyrighted materials contained therein are believed borrowed under fair use with no copyright infringement intended. Please feel free to leave comments at Rolled Spine's Productions WordPress blog. You can also send us Twitter comments through the Rolled Spine Podcast Twitter. Thank you for listening.